Okay, everybody, I have that it's 2 o'clock, so I will call the November 19th, 2020 Waco MPO Policy Board meeting to order. Chris, has this meeting been properly posted?
Yes, sir. The proof of posting was on the MPO website in accordance with state requirements as of November 16th, 2020.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I have been trying to keep up with those joining, so I'm going to share the ones that I believe are present. And I've got Jacob Bell, Keith Bond, Deidre Emerson, Kevin Evans, Jim Holmes, Will Jones, Sean Ubry, Joseph Pace, Stan Switek, and Bo Thomas as present. And the ones that I have not seen, I'll call your names. If you're here, please chime in. Bert Echterling, Scott Felton, Travis Gibbon, Jim Jaska, and Hector Sabito. Okay, we didn't hear any interjections, so we'll consider those absent. We do have 4 members that basically have gone off due to the political process, and so there'll be some new members coming on, but today our membership of the policy board is at 15, so our quorum is 8, and we have met that and exceeded it. So we do have a quorum. As far as public speakers go, public hearings, the rules have changed quite a bit this year with the COVID situation. So we are not having face-to-face meetings, as can be seen. Essentially, to boil it down, members of the public have a couple of options for how to participate with the policy board. One is to submit written comment cards ahead of time, and we'll have a time in a minute. If there's any of those will be read aloud. And also the public can register ahead of time to speak. There's a couple of appropriate times during the meeting. And so we'll open those hearings up at each time to see if there's anyone that will be chiming in on the Zoom call. Policy board can only respond to items that are on the agenda. So if a public speaker brings up something that was not on the agenda, we can't respond to it. And finally, an on-demand recording of the meeting will be made available following this meeting. So all of that being said, we will go to agenda item number 2. Chris, do we have any members of the public that registered with a card or to speak?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hearing none, we will go on to agenda item 3, approval of minutes. We have the September 17th, 2020 MPO Policy Board meetings minutes before us. Are there any changes or corrections from anyone on the board? Okay, hearing none, they will stand approved as presented. Item 4 is a resolution item, 2020-10, adoption of the 2020 update to the Waco MPO Public Participation Plan. Chris, I'll hand over to you for staff presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, a reminder that the public participation plan is something that is required of us under federal law. It basically identifies the tasks and processes that we're going to use at a minimum to ensure that our interested persons within our region have the opportunity to participate in the transportation planning process and to be able to express their questions, concerns, ideas to the policy board when we're considering various actions. The current plan was adopted 13 years ago and has been amended several times since then. And so we felt this was probably a good time to do a more thorough review of this process, mainly because we're being required to revise this plan in order to continue the various platforms we're using for social distancing related to COVID-19. And so there have been many provisions of the Texas Open Meetings Act that have been temporarily suspended by the governor. However, federal law hasn't changed. And since our PPP was not developed with social distancing in mind, there's really not a provision in there that really allows us to do a virtual meeting. And so at a minimum, we need to amend our plan to continue using that platform. So with that, we took the opportunity to take a look at what some other MPOs are using. And the platform that we've developed here is very similar to what the San Antonio MPO is using for their PPP. And there are a couple things we wanted to accomplish here. We want something that was a lot more user-friendly, a lot easier for interested persons to understand what it is we're going to do, to give them that opportunity to participate in this process, but also to right-size our processes so that we're not so that we're using staff time and resources in the most effective means possible. In addition to providing more opportunity for virtual meetings and virtual public involvement, which a lot of other MPOs are finding out are being able to use these platforms with great success. And so we think there's a lot of opportunity to get more input via these processes. And then we want to add some things into the plan to allow us to monitor and evaluate how these processes are working and to give us some metrics and some feedback on whether additional changes may be appropriate. So there were 4 primary goals with the PPP. These are essentially remain the same, but we did what I think we did was a better job of linking the various tasks that we're going to perform to one of these 4 goals. So we want to make sure that the public is informed about what it is we're doing or what it is we're proposing to do. We want to make sure that the diversity of input is improved and that all interested persons from each of our communities has an opportunity to provide their input. We, of course, want to meet our legal requirements that are identified under federal and state law. And then, of course, we want to evaluate how we're doing. Not going to go through all this, everything that's on this slide here, but basically there are certain stakeholder interests that have a vested interest in this process. We want to make sure that they have an opportunity to participate, but also know what's going on. And so we've identified well over 100 different stakeholder groups within the region that will be receiving additional input or additional advertising, if you will, of what it is we're proposing to do. We also identified a number of different strategies in a toolbox for us to pick and choose from where it's appropriate in order to try to ensure that we're reaching those folks who may have an interest in particular action. And then we've separated everything out that we are doing in terms of tasks and actions into either major actions, such as adoption of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, for instance, or a minor action, which may be the amendment to, say, our Unified Planning Work Program, or a review where there's not necessarily a policy board action, but it's something that we think it's a good idea for the public to at least be aware that's out there, and for transparency purposes, to give them an opportunity to review and give us some feedback. There's one really significant change that we want to make sure the policy board is comfortable with that involves our UPWP process. Adoptions remain the same. It remains a major action. Most amendments remain a minor action, but those amendments that have a total cost of less than $25,000 would be a little bit more streamlined. Still requires policy board action, still requires a public hearing at that policy board meeting, still requires advance notice, usually our normal meeting process, and identifying what's happening in agenda packet, but some of the other tasks that are more common for a minor action, we would not be going through for these particular amendments. And then finally, for monitoring and evaluation, we have identified a few measurable metrics to give us an idea of how effective our processes are. And then there are a couple of other things that we wanted to add in. Since back in 2007, social media wasn't a thing yet, we wanted to make sure that we were incorporating something for that. And then Section 508 addresses accessibility of our website. For instance, folks who perhaps may be deaf or blind, making sure that they also have opportunities to be able to understand what types of actions and tasks the MPO will be involved with as well. So with that in mind, we conducted a 45-day comment period beginning on September 21st, and we held a couple of virtual public meetings and also advertised where folks could get information if they didn't, say, have access to a computer or weren't able to join us online. We did not receive any inquiries or formal comments as part of that process. And so that then leads us to where we are today, where we are considering the update to this public participation plan. And so, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to address any questions the policy board may have.
Thanks, Chris. Anybody have any questions for Chris on this item? Okay. We will move to a public hearing. I'm going to open public hearing at 2:11 p.m. Chris, were there any registered cards or people who wish to speak?
There were no registered speakers today for this item.
None. Okay, I will close the public hearing at 2:11 p.m. and look for a motion on resolution 2020-10.
This is Holmes, and I move that we adopt the 2020 update to the Waco MPO PPP.
Okay, motion by Jim Holmes. Do I have a second?
Second. It's Deidre.
Second by Deidre Emerson. I'll ask everyone to unmute on the board. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Moving on to item 5, review and discussion regarding changes to proposed amendment 1 of the 2021 to 2024 Transportation Improvement Program and the status of the Texas statewide Transportation Improvement Program. Chris?
Okay, when we last left you back in September, we had mentioned that there were several changes that we were being asked to make to the tip that we adopted back in June. That from a statewide perspective, the draft STIP was well outside of fiscal constraint, and that there were several $1 billion statewide that needed to be moved beyond fiscal year 24 in order for Federal Highways to approve that document. It was determined that our share of that was $70 million that we had to move out, which left approximately $50 million for us to consider over the next 4 years. And this was within Category 2, TxDOT's Category 2, which, just as a reminder, this is the pot of money that the MPO has some discretion, or at least has an advisory role into how those dollars are used. And just as a reminder, the Texas Transportation Commission does have the final say on those projects. And so when we met with you back in September, the policy board did give us some direction on how you wanted those dollars spent. And the direction you gave us was that there was still some projects that pushed us over that amount that you would still like to see moving forward. And at that time, we thought there may be some opportunity to actually move forward with those. And so we then proceeded with a proposed TIP amendment for public comment shortly thereafter. Well, newsflash, we were told that what we had previously identified was too much, that we have to strictly adhere to that $50 million level for Category 2. And as you see on this slide, we had identified 68 million, a little over $68 million in projects. And so the instructions were come up with a different game plan. And so we met with the Waco district and also met with the MPO technical committee in October to see what strategy makes sense or what revised strategy makes sense. So at that time, we couldn't, there's no way that we could have both the Spring Valley Road in Hewitt and the Malden Mall project funded at the same time. And the assessment from the policy board was, although we would very much like to have Spring Valley in this mix, the Malden Mall project is very important and perhaps a higher priority for us to consider. And then, but that cost leaves us at around $44 to $46 million, depending on whether we consider the incentive to expedite construction or not, which we've subsequently found out the maximum we could consider was $2 million for this particular project. That doesn't leave much for anything else. And we still have these bridges on Highway 31 that were a high priority. And the feeling was, well, if we could at least still get the one bridge at the FM 939 interchange into the program, but the bridge at FM 2311 may have to wait. So that still puts us over the $50 million mark, but the conversations that have been going forward between the district and Austin indicated that that's probably close enough. At least that was the latest communication we had heard back on. And so what that means is basically we have something that looks very, very different from what we were talking about back in September. In fact, the only thing that doesn't change over what we originally programmed back in June is the one bridge on State Highway 31 and FM 939. Although the Malden Mall project would be moved up. The original concept was up to fiscal year 21, but that's a little bit different now also. And then I'll cover that in a second. And then we don't want to necessarily just remove these projects altogether from this document. We have an Appendix D where we place all these projects that are going to go forward sometime after 2024 because there's still an environmental process involved that we want to make sure that we have environmental clearance on these projects. And so by placing these into Appendix D, we're basically telling the Federal Highway Administration that we are making a commitment for these projects that once funding is available, we will incorporate them into the TIP. And that's enough of a commitment for them to be able to provide environmental clearance for these projects. So the new proposal is very different from what we took to the public back in September. And when we presented this to the technical committee, we expressed our concern, and the technical committee concurred that we probably ought to have another public process just to make sure that folks understand what's changed and to find out that whether or not they're comfortable with that or at least with the direction that's that we're proposing. We also got subsequent direction from Austin, the Transportation Planning and Programming Division, that they want us to hold off on any official actions. Initially, it was to December because what they needed to find out is the sum total of every action by all 23 MPOs to make sure that this document was going to be within a fiscal constraint that the Federal Highway Administration can approve. We got word 2 days ago, actually about 36 hours ago, that it's going to be a little bit longer, that we're going to have to wait before taking action. Now it's a January time frame. And so we're no longer going to be looking at this in December for policy board action. We're probably going to be looking at this for January. And then, as I mentioned with the Malden Mall project, initially we were thinking probably a fiscal year 21 letting date. Now it's fiscal year 22, but we feel, or at least talking with the district, the feeling is that that date's probably going to hold. and that we have a level of confidence that that's going to hold. And that's certainly important considering some of the development that's been going on in that corridor, and that's kind of in the pipeline for the immediate future. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to present this to you, get some feedback before we initiate another public process. And then assuming that that's okay, we'll then commence that probably after the New Year's holiday and bring this to you for action at your January meeting. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to address any questions the policy board may have.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, do we have any questions for Chris or anyone else on the call?
This is Holmes. I know this is a difficult process here as we kind of have to winnow down in the context of what's happened with COVID and text dot funds. I get it. But the mall-to-mall project has taken, not only from a safety, I know this ain't graded out very high on a safety need, but it's taken on even more importance for the city of Waco from a timing perspective, and really for all of McLennan County, and I'll even extend that to all of Central Texas, as we have seen the Amazon project go in there and a genuine need to get that on as fast a track as possible. And on top of that, the city has spent upwards, I think, of 11 million or more on just getting this thing, the utility set up and the right of way set up. And so the letting date, is there any clarity on that, Chris or Stan? Would you be able to speak to that? I know we were looking to get something kind of in place fourth quarter there, 2021. And I was just, if there's any clarity to be brought to that, that would be great.
Jim, this is Stan. So our fiscal year starts in September. So fiscal year 22 puts the letting in November of 21. It's technically fiscal year 22. There was original discussion about moving it into August of 21, and that couple of months there, really, it doesn't really get us a whole lot because of utility relocation schedules. If we seek to put some incentives into this contract to reduce impacts to the Amazon facility, because that brings significant traffic to the project while it's under construction, and of course long term. Incentives, if we let a project that's what we in TxDOT term a dirty project, which has utilities or maybe right of way outstanding, the possibility of putting incentives on it is still there, but it certainly complicates the bidding. So for the sake of a couple of months, it doesn't really make a substantial difference in the project completion, because if we let what we term, and it's an unofficial term, but if we let a dirty project with utilities or right of way that are not clear at bid time, we run the risk of complicating the project, or usually what we do is we put a delayed start clause in the contract where they wouldn't start work anyway. So I think we're in really good position based on original conversations that we had versus when the actual let date is. And it also puts us in a better position with whoever was a successful bidder to maybe include some of these $2 million plus minus dollars of incentives to lower the impact to the traveling public. So that's kind of where we're sitting.
Well, Stan, we thank you for that work and working to ensure that it has the November let date. I mean, we expect those utilities, that work to be completed by December. So it would be great to hang on to that November let date.
Yeah, that was really the driving force behind that November date. We have other considerations internal to TxDOT that really aren't, they're not something that the MPO can change. The Waco MPO can change. Leveling lettings across all of our letting months is, those are statewide issues and things like that. Being able to move and we have letting caps that we could not fit this project into our fiscal year 21, which is our current fiscal year. So it's kind of it kind of took care of itself as far as the schedule and understanding those obstacles that we have sometimes in fitting a project of this importance. And, it's hard to explain all at one time, but it fits nicely into November for a lot of reasons. So I appreciate that, Deidre.
And this is Holmes again, Stan. I appreciate TxDOT's sensitivity and cooperation and helping us with that project. It's got such an impact to, again, not only Waco but all of Central Texas and really all the state with all the things that are going on there. But I appreciate everybody's work on getting this thing moving.
Chairman, this is Bo. Could I ask a couple questions?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to ask very quickly, is there an estimated construction time on the mall-to-mall project?
I'm gonna ask Victor Gable to answer that because I know we have a preliminary schedule set, but when we get to working out where the incentives and stuff are gonna be. Victor, are you online? Can you answer that question more directly?
Yeah, this is Victor. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, so our design for the plan set, we're at 100% pretty much, but we have not finalized a construction time determination schedule yet. And that's kind of what Stan was saying. That's going to have to go in hand with when we set up this incentive package. But just ballpark a wag on this type of project, you're probably looking, I believe, the last rough estimate, anywhere from 2 3/4 years to 3.5 years, somewhere in that ballpark is kind of what you're looking at.
Okay.
Bo, if I could jump in there, we plan on doing this project under what we call an A+B. So the actual final duration will be determined by the bidding contractor. And that's the way that we did the interstate. We saved over a year on the interstate project above what we had scheduled. So we're hoping that we could see similar savings in time on this project as well.
Okay. The other question that I wanted to ask was this, Chris, the Appendix D, with that, the way that's being represented in the new plan, would those, if funding became available, would they be able to be, those projects be addressed?
That's the whole intent of that document, so that basically they're get them ready for construction so that when funding is available, it's a simple amendment to our process.
Chris, is there any prioritization or on those projects or order of priority?
Yeah, the general priority is going to be what's identified in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So of the ones in the Appendix D, I would say the Spring Valley Road is the next highest priority.
One last question, and this may be a question that's been asked and answered, and it just may be because I'm unfamiliar. But there's never been any thought to being able to phase larger projects like that, has there?
We work with the district quite a bit on phasing a lot of these projects, but you have to get it to, I believe the term is a minimum level of independent utility. That's something of a fancy term there, but the idea is that you can't narrow it down beyond a certain point or it just doesn't function correctly. And I think for mall to mall, the challenge we have is we've kind of gotten it down to that point. But what's really driving a lot of the cost is that we've got two railroads or two railroad tracks there. And Union Pacific has said if you're going to be doing work along here, you need to replace those bridges to get the piers out of our right of way. And so even though those main lane bridges are fine, we still have to replace them at their request. And that's unfortunately something that they have the ability to do under federal law.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Stan, I did have one question. You mentioned that the changing the time the project will actually be let should not have an adverse impact. In fact, it may play well into just the utility situation, and I agree with that from past experience. I guess a follow-up question I have on that, is there any adverse impact from it being in fiscal year 22 versus 21?
In terms of the schedule of the project, is that what you're asking?
Funding, is there anything negative that could come about from it being, is there anything we're missing or not asking?
No, not that, no, we've actually had a number of specific conversations with Austin and fitting into the statewide plan as well. It fits really nicely for their needs as well as ours in that time frame. It doesn't really impact the duration of the project after it's let. But right now, we do have to go through a STIP cycle to get it put into the STIP. But again, we're doing the legwork for that right now, and we don't see any negative impacts coming down the road. We have all the right eyes and right attention on it to make it happen in November.
Great, thanks, Dan. And I guess, Chris, I don't know if you or Stan would know, so when will the letting date be hammered out? When is this process going to be carried through statewide?
So Jacob, let me just say one thing. I just want to qualify that because Lord knows what could happen. It's 2020, you know what I mean? But based on the legwork we're doing right now, we're pretty confident, very confident that it'll be November. So
Thanks for the clarification. And when should the process be ironed out where the letting dates are set?
So I'm gonna speak a little bit into Victor's realm of the world, but I believe that once we go through the next STIP revision and it's officially in the STIP, I believe that that's probably our last small hurdle to get over. Isn't that correct, Victor?
Yes, sir. I'd agree with that.
And
So I'm assuming that would be a spring timeframe if the MPOs are voting in January. Chris, you may be able to shed some light on the process.
Yes, so we would be voting on that in January, and the commission is scheduled to approve the revised STIP in March. And typically it takes the Federal Highway Administration about 2 to 3 months after that point to formally approve the STIP. So we're probably looking at May to June when the STIP is actually official.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions on this topic? Well, I appreciate everyone's input on it. Stan and Victor, I guess obviously if anything changes, please keep us informed and we'll bring it up, especially if y'all see anything that may on the Highway 31 or mall-to-mall project that could move those at all. I think there's several people who would be very interested in knowing that and understanding all of those ramifications.
We understand the ramifications of that mall-to-mall project for the city and the area. So we're on it. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 6. We've got presentation and discussion regarding the commencement of the design and engineering phase of the Waco Transit Bus Rapid Transit Project, presentation by AECom. Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so for the reminder of the MPO Policy Board, this is a project we've been working on for some time. It is the #1 priority within our sixth strategy of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is basically connectivity and more specifically trying to get folks access to jobs and opportunities within our region. And this is also a very important project to making our transit system operate a whole lot more efficiently and improving travel times for those who use public transportation within our region. We had a feasibility study that was finished up approximately 2 years ago that looked at a number of different rapid transit options, and bus rapid transit was what came up as the most cost-effective solution for our region. Couple that with a redesign of the other fixed routes, and we could easily reduce the amount of travel time from one side of our region to the other by as much as half, which is a very significant impact or positive impact for those who use public transportation within our region. So the next phase of this project is we have to actually design it. We actually have to go through the preliminary engineering phase. We have to go through the environmental review phase before we can start talking about funding the project and actually getting it implemented. And so AECOM and their subcontractor, the Alliance Transportation Group, have been hired by the city of Waco and Waco Transit to produce or to provide this study. And they're going to give us kind of a status update of where we are right now, and then go through what some of the next steps in this process will be, and just a real quick review of maybe some of the decision points that the policy board may need to consider in the immediate future. So Paulette Vanderkamp is the project lead on this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my presentation, and Paulette, I think that will give you the opportunity to share your screen, and it looks like we're good to go here. So Paulette, if you want to mute yourself, the floor is yours.
Actually, I think Serena is going to give a little introduction as well today. So I'm going to have her give a little introduction. No. Okay. All right. Well, I guess she's not going to do that. So let me go ahead and get started then. Sorry about that. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So again, thank you, Chris, for the introduction and overview. And this is the agenda for our presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit about our project team overall. We're going to discuss and review what was done for the feasibility study. And then, like Chris mentioned, the project scope and task overview and status of where things stand. We did get notice to proceed back in August on this project, so we have been working quite a few of our tasks to date. We've also had a very had a public involvement outreach back in October, reintroducing the project, and then we're going to talk a little bit about that and our approach and schedule for our upcoming outreach in December, and then open it up to questions. So this is just our updated project route map. It's a 13.4 mile corridor with 14 stations. The two that you see highlighted in red are 2 future infill stations. We've had a couple that have changed. If you've had the chance to get on our website and take a look, this map will be updated by the time we go out to our next outreach in December. But 26th Street, Franklin Avenue, the intersection at 26th Street is now moved to 25th. As we've been going through our station siting, and Franklin Avenue at 35th has moved to the intersection of 32nd Street. So those are a couple of things that we've been making some edits to, and will be presented, like I said, during that outreach. This is just an overview of the makeup of our team, the structure of our team. I'm Paulette Vanderkamp, the project manager. Tim Simon with Alliance Transportation Group, or ATG, is the deputy project manager, and also worked on the previous feasibility study, as well as many people that are on our team. Bill Crowley is here as well. Gavin and Monica Hernandez is also going to be presenting. And I just wanted to mention ATG is a major partner on this project, but we also have CP&Y on the project as well, that they are doing the field survey and utility location mapping for us. So as we've moved into what FTA calls project development, the scope is pretty well defined during this phase of the project. This is just an outline of our main scope items: detailed route planning, updating that feasibility study that was done previously, updating ridership. But primarily we're focused on that preliminary design, 30% design, really getting a strong hold on the capital cost for the project as we move into looking at the funding for the project. This also requires a clearance by FTA's lead agency, the environmental review and clearance by FTA. And then we'll also be looking at governance and financial assessment. That's really going to kick off after the first of the year, but we've started an initial strategy for that. And then all throughout the process, our stakeholder and community outreach. So some early project tasks, I'm not going to go through all of these, but we've been conducting very serious conducting agency coordination. We've also developed our design criteria, but what FTA refers to as the basis of design that's been submitted to WTS, MPO, the city, and shortly to TxDOT for review. We've conducted our early outreach, like I mentioned, the reintroduction of the project. That was a virtual open house. It was conducted back in October. And what we've really been focused on, like I mentioned, those couple of station sites that have moved, is locating those station sightings, and also it says here maintenance location, but that is expected to be at the current maintenance facility site. So this is just an overview of our schedule. Like I mentioned, the tasks over here in this column. Here we are in the second week of November. We've kicked off all of our tasks. Some of them are nearing completion. Down here is just point out the financial assessment and governance plan. We've just kicked that off, and that will get really into serious work after the first of the year. We've conducted our initial public outreach here in October, our second coming up in December, and as preliminary engineering and environmental review of the project come to completion in February of next year, we will also conduct our next round of public outreach, and the last for this phase of the project. So some project goals that have carried over from the feasibility study. You're probably very familiar with these, increasing the efficiency of operations and decreasing overall transit times, increasing access to employment opportunities and critical services. But the third one, most importantly, like I've mentioned, and we'll get into this a little bit more detail later in the presentation, but leveraging available local, state, and federal funding opportunities. At the end of project development, those have to be committed funding for the project before you can submit for rating to FTA. Some additional potential project goals as we look at that rating process for the project: provide safe and reliable transit service, and support and promote economic growth. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Tim Simon, the Deputy Project Manager, and he's going to talk about, like I said, what was done on the feasibility study, get a little review, and then an overview of what Bus Rapid Transit, or BRT, the technology that's been chosen for this project.
Thank you, Paulette. So as we said, we did the feasibility study, which was really a feasibility study for high capacity transit. Of those modes, BRT was selected, but we also evaluated light rail transit. And so why BRT? So BRT achieves a lot of the benefits that you'd get with something like light rail transit, but without as significant as the price tag. So what are those benefits? Frequent service, placemaking at the stations, safety, reliability, and transit-oriented development. So you get the benefits of, for everyone, and not just those using transit. So we evaluated 3 corridors and ended up with this, our preferred alignment that's scored highest overall on the criteria you see here. Next slide. And then this was the preferred alternative. And so now it's time to take this. You see all the little dots along there. That's really the station sites. And now we're drilling in to find out, where the footprints are and confirm the operational details and whatnot. So next slide. I think we can start going into our first task, which is updating the feasibility study. So what's changed from the last time we did this to now, and making sure that we've confirmed all that and it's going into our design reviews. And so an example of that would be the couplet. Last time, we were unsure what was going to happen with Franklin, Washington. Now we know. So now we're going through and just confirming all those assumptions, documenting that, and moving on. One of the things we're looking over is the change in ridership overall. Pre-COVID, Waco saw an increase in ridership, so that will go into our ridership analysis and into helping design, which stations get what amenities and what the footprint size is. And then route planning as well. So like I said, we're really going through and drilling in and defining all those items like exact frequencies, service span, dwell times, and all those are going to have the downstream impacts that will impact operation and maintenance and capital costs, which we're going to talk about in a little bit here. Thank you.
Bill?
Yeah, so this diagram explains a little bit more, just kind of in another way. Shows a typical arterial bus route where about 50% of the time the bus is in motion. Another 1/4% is with passenger delays, getting on or off the bus, getting their change in order. And then other things are traffic delays where the bus is stuck in traffic. So the simple idea of bus rapid transit is to get the bus in motion more. One of that is reducing the passenger delays to try to make the boarding and alighting of passengers simplified, and also to improve the traffic flow, to make the bus not have to stop in traffic as often. So then the next slide, we talk about some of the ways we can do that. There's the operational improvements in the top, and then customer amenities on the bottom. So some of this is also just improving the quality of time that people are waiting, not only reducing that time, but hopefully improving that time in quality as well. So the platforms, Tim talked about the footprints, and as one of the things that we do to reduce the travel time or the dwell time of people getting on and off the bus is to raise the platform up to the bus floor height. In doing that, here's a few examples where either the sidewalk can raise up or stay below, or actually become part of the platform itself. So we're working through what works in each situation. We have to be careful as we do so because it does impact other things. But as we mentioned, this image from Grand Rapids is an image where the pedestrians pass through the waiting environment, and all those benefits can be seen in the travel time of the passengers. On the next slide, we get into some of the amenities that can be at the stations. This image to the left is from Cleveland. It's an operation that went into service in 2008. So those are kind of older. Whereas on the right is a image from Oregon, which is more like an iPad telling real-time travel information. So we'll work through the capital cost as well as the operations and maintenance cost. And then finally, there are some improvements that would not be necessarily seen by the passengers themselves. But if we do go to a battery electric bus or some other type of bus, maybe it's compressed natural gas, there would be improvements that would have to go into place to make those operational. Now, the entire fleet wouldn't necessarily have to be that, but we have to work through those costs as well. Another item is a comfort station. It's simply a place for operators to use the restroom, only for operators at the end of line. So we are talking about having one of those at probably the northeastern end of the line. With that, we'll move on to environmental.
All right. Thank you, Bill. All right. So like I mentioned before, another one of the requirements of project development by FTA is the environmental review and NEPA process. That's the National Environmental Policy Act. It is a requirement for funding for the project. And FTA, as the lead agency, has designated this project as a categorical exclusion. Because it's primarily contained within existing right-of-way, it's anticipated very minimal impacts to environmental resources. So this categorical exclusion, or CE, is a streamlined process that FTA has come up with. It's kind of a worksheet, checking the box kind of a worksheet. However, there are a number of the resources that take some additional documentation. I'm not going to go through all these here on the slide, but those that have the asterisk next to them are the areas that there will need to be supporting documentation attached to that categorical exclusion documentation. So we talk a little bit about our station siting and how we roll that into how we look at environmental impacts. We take that footprint, basically a larger footprint, the area of potential effects, or APE. And this is just a representation of that. The yellow line is this area outside of the existing right-of-way that we look at for environmental impacts, whether they be historic, biological, noise, things of that nature, hazmat. But we are also taking a conservative approach to how we are clearing the project. As you can see, the green locations for station platforms. However, we're clearing area a little bit larger for that, so that if in case these platforms, if for some reason moved to the other side of the intersection or had to move a little, we have that flexibility so we don't have to go back out and do environmental clearance or environmental analysis on an additional area. So we've taken a very conservative approach from a schedule standpoint. So this is just kind of gives you an idea of what we look at from an environmental standpoint for those resources. And Gavin's going to talk to you about our status of our governance and funding tasks.
Thank you, Paulette. For our governance task, we're going to take a look at how Waco Transit is currently set up, and we're going to do a peer review of some of the other smaller BRT systems, people of about similar size, primarily with universities in them, so that we can kind of see how's their governance set up and how does that work for them. And then we'll make recommendations specific to Waco based on those reviews. We're also going to be doing a funding analysis. Is going to be looking at both the capital cost, or what it's going to take to get it up and running, but then what is the ongoing long-term operations and maintenance costs that are going to need to come up every year. We're also going to look at the impacts of COVID-19. Earlier today, we heard some pretty extensive discussions about moving projects around due to changes in funding, in part as a result of COVID-19. We want to make sure we're appropriately accounting for that in our financial planning going forward, and where we don't know exactly what's going on, hopefully we can start to make some educated guesses based on what we're seeing. We're going to look at paths for funding that'll include both the small storage program as well as bus and bus facilities. And yeah, next slide. The CIG program, or the small storage program, this is reserved major cap. This is what most large transit infrastructure programs are used as their funding source. They're required to be an investment in a defined corridor. You have defined stations. If you look back at what Bill was talking about earlier, transit signal priority and bidirectional service with frequent service. We're also for this particular program, we're looking at projects that are less than $300 million and seeking less than $100 million in federal funding. As we talked about, this project is currently in the FTA small storage project. It's a multi-step, multi-year process. So we've passed that first hurdle already. That's entrance into project development. Now, as Paulette mentioned, we're working on our environmental review process, getting our documents into the preferred alternative. That's going to mean putting it into the long range plan for this body, as well as your TIP eventually, as we move into funding. And then as the project moves out before a grant agreement, we're going to have to go through evaluation and rating process. So that evaluation and rating process FTA looks at two equally weighted criteria: project justification, which is really looking at the merits of the project, ridership, costs, the community that's served, and the local financial commitment. You know, is financial plan, is it reasonable? Where are the commitment of the non-funds, federal funds? And then what's the current financial condition of the agency that's receiving the funds? As you can imagine, FTA does not want to give money to an agency that does not practice good financial management. And Paul's going to talk to you a little bit about the schedule.
Yeah, so this is just an expanded schedule. I've highlighted here preliminary engineering and NEPA, what we're in now. Like I mentioned, we had notice to proceed back in August of this year, and we are on schedule to finish up in February with preliminary engineering and the NEPA process. I want to mention that right after that, we start to begin final design. And while that process is taking place, the evaluation next year, submittal for rating to FTA, typically in August, September of every year, and then a recommendation early the next spring of 2022. All the time, well, during final design is going on with a spring 2022 construction grant agreement consideration, and then about 18-month construction and vehicle procurement schedule, with an opening of late 2023 for the project for service. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Monica, and she's going to talk about our public involvement, what we've done in October, and what we can look forward to in December and February.
Thank you, Paulette, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present information and share as it relates to the public involvement program for Waco BRT. So I will go down the list, identify what we're doing, what the scope entails, and what the goals are. So to start off, we do have a public involvement plan that is in place that was closely coordinated with WTS and the MPO, Waco MPO. Our outreach involvement includes a number of different strategies. These are definitely unprecedented times. We realize that we are working with a large variety of different stakeholders. So therefore, our strategies include both traditional and virtual engagement type of opportunities. Our key messages have to do with the educational component that touches on what is BRT, how does it work? How is it that public involvement plays a role in this project, and what is the decision making as it relates to the different elements associated with this project. We are engaging a number of stakeholders, definitely placing a focus on those that were involved early on during the feasibility study, and also continuing to invite more stakeholders, the general community, to participate and be involved with helping the development of the project, and coordinating closely with City of Waco, FTA, and WTS, and the Waco MPO. Our schedule as far as public outreach goes coincides with the major milestones associated with the project. So back in October, when we kicked off the project, even prior to October, what we did is we coordinated for the reintroduction of the project, to reintroduce the project to the community, to create an opportunity to talk about where we're at and how we got here. So during the mid-October, we did conduct a number of different activities. I'll touch on those here with the next slide. The next item on here, I'm sorry if you could just go back.
Sorry.
Thank you. Has to do with the current milestone where we are at, and that is highlighting the station siting, the PE, and again, that will be taking place in early December as far as the public involvement goes. And then for the final element, the final PE, we are planning to create another opportunity come mid-February. So what did we do back in October? What was the purpose? Again, the idea was to reintroduce the project, explain what the history is, provide some context, and set the platform for what this project will call for as far as our scope and public input opportunities go. We did conduct a virtual open house that was made available for a 2-week period with a number of different pieces of information. We received over 200 site visits and comments from 27 individuals. And then coming up here in December, rather quickly, we are coming out again, providing an opportunity for stakeholders to comment on the station siting, the PE for the station design, and to also share information regarding our NEPA environmental review process. We will conduct both traditional engagement opportunities and virtual engagement opportunities. This is the contact information that we are sharing with stakeholders to be able to contact us, ask questions, leave comments, and that is all I have for the public involvement. Thank you, Paulette.
Yeah, thank you, Monica. And that wraps up our presentation. So we open it up for questions, comments.
This is Holmes again, and Paulette, thanks to you and your team for the presentation today. I know this has a broad-based sort of conditional support, I'll say, at council at the city of Waco. You almost have to go back a stage too to show how the current bus system works with the non-concentric circles. I would say I'm just trying to get from one end of town to the other, and how many different buses you have to get on to get, how much time that takes. So the efficiency is definitely a worthwhile endeavor here, and I think we're behind it. Again, the connectivity big, the economic development's got elements of economic development to this, the efficiency and safety. What I think the next big thing that the council is going to be focusing on from the city of Waco perspective is the financial analysis and the operations and maintenance, the O&M part of this project, and how that works year to year. And I know that's part of the process. So I appreciate your work on it, and look forward to seeing this thing move along.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Paulette or her team? Chris, anything else from you or anything you need from us as a board?
Not at this point. We will probably have another presentation towards the end of this study to review some of the recommendations that are coming out of that. And then at some point, we'll probably have to have a conversation about beyond the federal dollars, how is this project going to be funded? What's the non-federal portion? And then if at the federal award stage, then we would be talking about our transportation improvement program.
Very good. Well, if there's no other questions, we'll move on to the next action item. Paulette and team, you're absolutely welcome to stay on, but you're absolutely free to go. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 7 is discussion and updates from TxDOT regarding significant highway construction within the Waco metro area. I assume Mr. Zaka will be sharing with us as usual.
Hey, Jacob, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, can you see my screen too?
Not yet.
Not yet. Let's see. How about now?
Yep, there you go.
Okay. So this is up at the north end of the project. You can see completed southbound frontage road. We've started some southbound main lane pavement. That'll continue through November into December. On the northbound frontage road from the Sonic, you can see here at the right side of the picture going up to North Loop 340. That pavement has been ongoing and should complete early part of December. And then down at the bottom, you can see we've got panels set on the new Barron's Overpass Bridge. It's expected that we'll pour that bridge this weekend, actually. Okay, same intersection looking to the south. Again, you can see completed southbound frontage road in this area. Contractors completed drainage as it's working on subgrade for the new southbound main lanes between Barron's and 84. You should see pavement going down November, December, with concrete pavement going down early part of 2021. To the left of the screen, you can actually see asphalt bond breaker being placed on this northbound frontage road between 84 and Barron's. pavement is scheduled next month to be completed in this area. All right, and this is moving to the 84 intersection looking to the east. Not much has changed since our last update. And likely this intersection, you won't see much happen on this side until the frontage road is open to traffic and you see main lane traffic shifted on the southbound main lanes. We've got to get that old northbound bridge out of the way before we complete some of the intersection work there in the middle. An overhead shot of the 84 bridge. That bridge, we're expected to place concrete on it middle of December. Again, you can see some of the main lane work that's ongoing here. Again, you should see concrete pavement hitting the ground there in January timeframe of 2021. Again, another shot of the bridge. You can see here the braided ramp coming together nicely. That bridge is also expected to be, the deck is expected to be placed in December. Again, you can see bond breaker placed on the main lanes. January, February, you'll see actual concrete pavement there. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see good portions of the northbound frontage road that have been paved. We've been working in this Bellmead Drive intersection this week. We'll hopefully have it wrapped up in the December timeframe, and we'll be looking to get a good portion of this frontage road opened up later this year, hopefully before we hit the new year. This is the east half of the 77 intersection. So again, you can see where a lot of it's come down to an at-grade intersection. Again, you'll see it probably look pretty similar over the next couple months. Once we get main lane traffic shifted, work should pick up here. An overhead shot of the new 77 overpass. Steel beams are in place. Panels are being set. We should place concrete deck there mid-December. Again, retaining walls are complete on either side. Crews are working on subgrade for main lane pavement, and concrete should be going down in the January, February timeframe here as well. Okay, looking to the south from 77, again on the right-hand side, this is completed pavement for the southbound frontage road. This on-ramp has been closed. Contractor will be removing the old asphalt, tying in new pavement up over the bridge, and again, placing concrete there sometime early next year. On the left side of the screen, you can see some newly placed concrete pavement for the northbound frontage road. Moving south to Forest, again, around the Forest Street area, you should see pavement going down in the December timeframe and should have that intersection reopened, hopefully early 2021. Here's just an overhead shot of that Forest Street area I just mentioned. You can see drainage has been complete, getting the area regraded and ready for paving, which should go down in December. Here in this area, there was a deep drainage line that was installed from the railroad tracks running back to the north. That's been completed. Contractor is backfilling that area. Should get it filled to grade and then begin paving it early part of next year as well. Here's the UPR overpass. Deck has been placed, working on approach slabs, and again, we'll be tying it into the new pavement. Same bridge, different angle looking to the north. Again, this is the railroad overpass, and you can see that the southbound main lane pavement area starting to come together here. Okay, this is directly over the MLK overpass. This bridge deck has actually been placed since this picture was taken, so concrete is down. Just a note on the left-hand side, it's not shown here, but there's an on-ramp to the interstate. When we get back from the Thanksgiving holiday, that ramp's going to close for about a week for a drainage installation. So frontage road traffic will be detoured to 77 and 84 to tie back into the interstate in this area. That closure is expected to last 3 to 4 days. Moving to the south, this is our new Brazos River overpass. For those that have driven by recently, there's actually 3 sections of this deck that have been placed since the picture's been taken. The northernmost span, southernmost span, and the center span. Actually, next week, before we leave for the Thanksgiving break, the remaining 2 sections of the deck will be placed, and we'll be starting on rail after the Thanksgiving holiday. And again, you can see north and south where crews are starting the new southbound main lane pavement work. Okay, here's a shot of the U Parks Bridge. Again, that deck's been placed. Asphalt bond breaker's been placed to the north. As some of the work at the Brazos wraps up, you'll see concrete pavement tying the two bridges together the early part of next year, getting ready for traffic. Okay, just another angle there at U Parks. You can see here at the left, crews are installing drainage for the new frontage road here. As that work wraps up, you'll see some of the new actual frontage road subgrade work going on. Early part of next year, hopefully see some asphalt and some concrete going down there as well. Here you can see the retaining walls. For those that have driven by, I'm sure have seen the retaining walls have really come together, are basically complete south of the river now. And crews will be working on tying in concrete pavement from University Parks to the 4th, 5th Street overpass down to 11th, 12th Street, starting after the Thanksgiving holiday. In an overhead shot view of the 4th, 5th Street overpass. Here at the bottom, you can see this is where we've got our 4th Street closure to install the new 24-inch water line. That's been progressing pretty well. It's going to be tight, but we think we can still get this reopened, hopefully by the end of this year. If not, it'll be the very early part of 21 to get that intersection reopened. Moving to the south on the frontage road, crews are working on 10th Street currently to get it placed and reopened. Should have 8th, 9th reopened by the end of this year as well on concrete pavement. Over on the left-hand side of your screen, you can see some of the new northbound frontage road pavement that's been placed. We should tie into existing pavement here in front of the Valero, hopefully next week before we leave for Thanksgiving, actually get that concrete on the ground. Moving further south down to 11th, 12th, you can see this bridge deck's been placed. Retaining walls are complete. Actually started some paving down at the south end of the project, tying it into existing. And crews will be paving from this bridge back to the south, again, starting after the Thanksgiving holiday. Left-hand side of the screen, again, a good portion of the northbound frontage road has been placed. Actually, currently, and then following the Thanksgiving holiday, crews are coming in, tying in some of these side streets as well, getting it ready to open the early part of 2021. And then a shot of the south end of the project. Main thing going on down here is on the northbound frontage road in the Spate to 16th Street area. After the Thanksgiving holiday, crews should be completed working on this tie-in here, getting 16th tied in and Spate tied in. So that'll hopefully clean up this area of the project. With that, that's all I've got as far as an update. I'll open it up. Are there any questions or comments, concerns about the project?
This is Holmes again. Just thanks, Clayton, for this presentation. I mean, it really brings it to life. Obviously, we get to see everything almost foot by foot and the progress you're making. I know that pre-COVID, it seemed like the first question everybody was asking was, you know, are we going to get this thing done quicker than what we thought? You know, and it seemed like we were pulling it in, 3 months, 6 months. And I don't know if anybody's asked for a while, but what is our progress in the last, 6 months? Where are we looking at as far as general time frame of completion? Now, are we thinking it's going to be faster? Or is it just about right on schedule? Or just if you could give us some color there, that'd be great.
Sure. We're still running within our contract time for sure. Just walking through some phasing. The general thought right now is that we open up at least the southern half of the project to new main lane pavement. So basically from the 77 intersection down to 17th, 18th, put main lanes on new pavement in the February, March timeframe. Hopefully get all of the southbound main lane opened up next summer. And then we're targeting a substantial completion date of late 2022, early 23 right now.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Clayton. Appreciate it.
Sure. All right. With that, I'll pass it back to you, Chris.
All right. Thank you. Mr.
Chris, I
Chairman.
don't think we have anything else under item 7, so we'll move on to item 8, which is your director's report.
I apologize for the rapid fire here. And hopefully I didn't get anyone a little dizzy with that. But we have 2 items on the director's report. The next policy board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, December 17th. Once again, this will be a virtual format, and we anticipate that's probably going to continue for some time. We are now not considering Amendment 1 to the TIP. That will be in January, but we do have to present to you a report on Waco Transit's Public Transit Agency Safety Plan, which was adopted back in June. And while there is an action that the policy board is required to take at this point, it's really more to acknowledge the safety targets that are included in there. And basically to say that we will incorporate those into our planning process, and the projects that we select in our plans and tips will at least consider those targets and trying to move the needles on those targets. And then we'll also have our normal update from TxDOT regarding significant highway construction. There was a question about other safety targets, such as the highway targets that we do on an annual basis. That will be in February. And then we also wanted to update the policy board that a couple of us have been appointed to various different work groups and committees. Chelsea on my staff has been appointed to our national organizations work group on biped issues. And they got their work started this past summer. She is also appointed by the Texas Transportation Commission to the State Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And that committee is charged with providing recommendations to TxDOT on their various bicycle and pedestrian planning efforts. And then for me, I learned last month that the TxDOT TP&P division is recommending that I be appointed to as a full voting member of the Texas Freight Advisory Committee. And for the last 3 years, I've been serving as an ex officio member of that committee representing MPOs across Texas. And so we'll just hopefully those appointments are something that the board is okay with.
Yeah, this helps. I'll interject here. Congratulations, Chelsea and Chris. These are, it's great that you're working your way up into these committees and boards and having Waco's voice be heard in these environments. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We both appreciate the feedback. And Mr. Chairman, that completes my director's report.
Okay, thanks for the report, and I echo Mr. Holmes' comments. Chelsea and Chris, congratulations, and we're great with y'all being on that. As they say, the reward for hard work is more hard work, so congratulations. And with that, our agenda is completed, and I will adjourn the meeting at 3:18 p.m. Thanks, everyone, and y'all have a great day.